welcome to our first lesson on the Americas. So we'll be looking at several different civilizations today. We'll be looking at the Olmec culture, the oldest culture in this region of the world. Alright, we'll be looking at the Zapotec after that, followed by the Toltec. Alright, and then if we have time, we'll look into the Mayan civilization as well. Alright, so, main idea, part 1, Mesoamerica. Civilizations in Mesoamerica are some of the earliest and most advanced in the Americas. Alright, Mesoamerica, which was originally southern Mexico and northern Central America today. Alright, this area is ideal for farming. It has cities and complex social structures are going to arise there. And there we have the Olmec, the oldest society. They lived in hot, humid lowlands. The height of their society was between 1200 BC to 300 AD. They built the first large towns in Mesoamerica. And the earliest Olmec town had a pyramid, a courtyard, 8 giant stone heads typically, and throne-like monuments. The towns typically served as ceremonial, political, and religious centers. Alright, Olmec society, Olmec rulers typically lived, families lived in towns, lower social classes lived outside the towns, whereas the elite led the ceremonies and controlled the trade network. Trade ran from the Gulf to the Pacific coast, so from rubbery, pottery, furs, also beliefs, arts, and games were things they would trade. And so, just to show, here's my mouse. This orange line right here, it was where the Olmec culture used to be, right on the coast. Here's an old pyramid mound, and then up top on the left is you can see an example of the stone heads that could be found on the in their society. All right, the first civilization, Zapotec. Is next. Southern Mexico, sometime around between 1500 BC to 750 AD. At its height was after the Olmec. It is believed they had their first contact, though, with the Olmec. They began as farmers, built their first capital city around 500 BC, and it was called Montalban, the first true city in Mesoamerica, okay? It was located high above the valley of Oaxaca. Monte Albán had a huge main plaza with pyramids, temples, palaces, and their decorations were very much influenced by the Olmec. They had a large ball court, an observatory, and a population of 25,000 at its height. The city began to decline, though, when leaders lost support of their people, but they still used their high status for burials. Alright, so here's what Monte Albán looks like. Very large city, kind of up on a cliff in a beautiful valley. You can see part of the pyramid has been eroded over due to time. It's pretty common of Mayan ruins. Alright, first civilizations, Toltec. This is the next one. They believed in the highlands of central Mexico for about 8900 to 1200. Their capital was located at Tula, near what are called obsidian mines. Alright, they also had a major trade center. They built pyramids and temples, which is a common theme, okay? They had a militaristic society where they had their fierce warriors established dominance over a large region. There was great climate change, and the social conflict led to decline. Alright, so here's an example of the pillars and an example of the pyramid of the Toltec people. Alright, now we're going to look at the Mayans. Alright, the Mayans was a very large civilization. Compared to the Olmec, the Zapotec, and the Toltec, they were much smaller in comparison. It's believed that they developed around 1000 BC, and they had built more than 40 cities of 5,000 to 100,000, each at its height. The early Mayan civilizations first lived in small villages. They grew corn, beans, and squash, which thanks to there is plenty of rainfall. This part of the country, of the world, it would rain every day. All right, rich soil, but there were problems with rainforests. So you have slash and burn agriculture. All right, where they would clear the forest land by burning it for crops. All right. They had flat terraces built in the hillsides to help control erosion. They also developed trade. Since farming doesn't provide all their needs, the villages would trade with other villages for cotton and jade. They would trade cacao, salt, obsidian. All these helped the villages grow to become large cities. Let's talk about the Mayan cities and government. Most cities built between 8250 and 900 is considered the Classic Age. Cities like Tikal and Copan are some of the most spectacular in Mesoamerica. Brightly painted pyramids, temples, and palaces are found there. City-states each had their own ruler and government. No ruler ever united the cities into a single empire, but the cities were linked because of culture, even though they didn't have a central government. So it's very similar to the ancient Greeks when it comes to culture. All right, they were also linked with by trading jade, obsidian for cotton, rubber, cacao from lowlands. They were also linked by constant warfare with each other. Okay, um, they would go through battles, kings trying to gain land and power from other city states, but they were never fully unified under one empire. Here's a picture of Tikal that you can actually go and visit today. At some point in your life, you need to visit these ruins. They're amazing. All right, so Tikal, as you can see on the map, is right here. All right. Although Tikal is a great city, it's not the greatest. The Maya worship many gods and believe they influence daily life. They also believe their kings communicated with the gods. So to keep the gods happy, the Maya performed private and public rituals. They had religious offerings where they would offer blood by piercing the tongue and the skin. They only used human sacrifices occasionally. They had a ritual ball game where the losing team would have to sacrifice their hearts to the gods. The upper class society had priests who would lead the religious ceremonies. They had professional warriors who got war victims for human sacrifice. You also had other classes, merchants, craftspeople, and middle class, and a lower class, which consisted of farmers, slaves, and they provided food, labor for other classes. So here's an example of a ball court. So you can see here. Um, Here's a small one down on the right. And the idea was you had to get the ball up into the air through the loop. The first team to score so many points won. So the way you would do it is you actually had to use your hips. You had to get your hips in it and use your power of your hips to send it flying into the air. Alright, so let's look at Mayan achievements before we close out today. They built, well, actually, I think we have time. We can continue. They have impressive buildings and architecture, which included canals, advances in astronomy, math, and writing. They observed the movements of the sun, moon, and planets. They created a calendar systems created based on astronomical observations. One 365-day calendar for farming, and which is basically a solar calendar, and then a 260-day religious calendar. These calendars were more accurate than what they used in Europe at the same time. They had a numbered writing systems. Number system included new concepts, like they were the first civilization to use a concept like the zero, which is funny because despite all the advances the Greeks made in mathematics, the fact that they didn't have a zero is mind blowing. Why they never even thought of that. They used a complex writing system of glyphs or symbols that represented objects and sounds. They would carve writing in stone, and occasionally they would also use bark paper, a book called a codex. This is the Castillo. This is at Chichen Itza, the greatest city of the Mayans they ever built. But like the others, Mayans too eventually abandoned their work. Here is the Mayan calendar on stone. Yes, it does end at 2012, but that does mean it's not not the end of the world. All right, here's an example of the Mayan lettering system. Their writing, you can see, how they used to account for multiple letters. So like that was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. This meant 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they created their own numbering system, just like the Romans did with their numerals. Okay. Decline of Mayan civilization was around 900 AD. There are lots of factors: environmental damage, drought, warfare over competition caused land to be destroyed for more crops. You also probably have abuse of power by strong kings. And when you have the abuse of power, then it makes the people realize that they're not as connected to the gods as they thought they were, that sort of thing. And although they declined, they did not disappear. One of the things that's interesting is they left the jungles of the forest and moved to the coast and created cities there. And these people would be these Mayans, although they abandoned the great cities they built in the jungle. Um, they still maintained some of their culture, and they still live there today on the coast. Now they've moved back into the interior as it's continued to grow, as the population for the time grow. But eventually they left the jungles. Why? We don't really know the exact reason why they left the jungles. It's the Mayans have more mysteries than what we know. There's still so much about them. And one of the things you'll learn in a video that you're going to watch in my class is about the Mayans is how that there's still so much they've used satellites to uncover civilizations that are still hiding beneath the earth that have been eroded on over time. So anyway, so that's it for today. I'm going to have a part two to this, I guess part two video, but still the second half of the first half of the notes. And that'll be on the Aztecs. It'll be coming up soon.